In this video, we're discussing the new April glass brewer. Welcome, my name is Patrick Rolfe and this is Coffee with April. For this episode, we are taking a look at the new generation of our April brewer. And this, which we already teased through our subscription, is a glass brewer. Now, there's a few questions here, one of them being, why do we do a new material of the brewer? Two, what will happen with the ceramic? And three, will there be other materials coming as well? Now, what we first want to do here is just to walk you through the glass version of it. We're also going to come up with a comparison brew with the old ceramic and the new glass. So, a few things to consider here with the glass product. So, first of all, one, it's handmade. Which makes it a bit more expensive, but it makes the craftsmanship of it actually a lot better. And funnily enough, a lot more consistent as well. So that's one of the things that we've really been looking at. Two, what we have is actually two different parts. So we have the glass part, which is the actual filter holder. And we have the ring that we're going to put the glass part in that is actually made in plastic. Now, there's an obvious reason for why this is plastic, and that's because it's a lot more durable. If we would do this in glass, we would have to do it in two parts and actually glue the glass on the glass. And that is just not a very good thing to do. Plus, the amount of breakage would be very high. So what we've done is that we're actually done a plastic ring. And that's really interesting because it allows us to explore a few different kind of features. So one of the things that we think is really important when it comes to the April brewer is how we handle what we refer to as the over and the under pressure when it comes to brewing. And a big part of that is actually the holes on the base of this brewer, as well as the pockets that comes with the original ceramic version. Now, this is important because it's going to help us control the drawdown. It's going to help us get a sweeter cup of coffee and overall just a better balance in the cup. Now, another thing that is really important here is that we made sure that there's perfect stability in between the two parts, so they actually fit perfectly. So you don't have to worry about something not being 100% even. It's going to fit on completely, and it's going to come in the package in two separate pieces that you just basically put on top. So a very simple solution. Now, maybe the more interesting question for you guys, what is the difference when it comes to the brewing? And we're going to show you. So step one is always, we're just rinsing out the filters. We're using our own filters. And we're using basically the third generation of it. So we did one, which was a tiny bit larger. Then we actually went down in size, changed a few of the variables with the paper filter to suit the brewer a bit better. More about that in a separate video in the future when that was kind of arrives. So what we have here is basically the exact same coffee, washed carbonic macerated geisha from the Finca Deborah farm in Panama. We pre-ground this yesterday on a grind size of about 9 using the ditting. So these are rested the exact same amount of time. So we're basically using identical coffees in these two brewers. 13 grams of coffee to 200 grams of water. I'm going to pour these identical as well because the key here is to figure out, so what is the differences and how is the coffee actually coming out in terms of taste. So we're starting with a 40-gram circle pour, making sure that all of that coffee is wet. Moving over to a center pour up to 100 grams. And that's all done within 10 seconds on both of the brews. The water sits at 92 degrees Celsius, and part of the interesting thing here is to see how well the temperature is kind of holding up in between the two brewers, but also looking at the total brew time. So at 30 seconds, I do my second pour, and that's going to be identical to the first pour. And with that, we're also going to make some basic measurements. The measurement tool we're using now is basically only reading the very top of the liquid, so it's not measuring the slurry, and that's a different temperature. But it still has value. And basically what we're looking at is is there a big difference in terms of temperatures? And the temperature are actually basically identical. The ceramic is about 2 to 3 degrees higher, but it's a very minor difference. And when you make the measurements over time, you're going to see that there's just discrepancy in between each time we measure. So in terms of temperature stability, they're actually quite similar. Now, on top of that, of course, we have a slower temperature. We're going to come back with more videos. We're going to measure that as well properly. But we know in the industry, there's an ongoing discussions just about the different materials and how well they retain the temperature when we are brewing. This is arguably quite important. I should argue that when we decided to make another version of the brewer in terms of material, the main pitch there is aesthetics. We find the difference between ceramic and glass overall not being a massive difference, especially when you work with ceramic as thin as ours. So basically, if you're working with a ceramic that is a bit thicker, let's say Hario or like the traditional Kalita, the differences will actually be bigger than what we're experiencing with these kind of two brewers here. So the glass brewer actually has a slight slower drawdown than the ceramic. And the reason for that is that we made a few kind of key changes in the design, which we already talked about. One, to make it a bit more sturdy, and two, also to make sure that we get that kind of better extraction. We want a sweeter coffee. We believe in that we can always kind of improve every generation of the brewer that we are doing. We also have changed the size slightly, mainly because when we look at the glass brewer, that's actually a handmade product, whereas the ceramic is based on a mold that is then being kind of replicated. So we had to make a few adjustments just to also fit into the whole production scheme of things. So basically, brew time where we are, there's a 10-second difference on the same dose. We're using the same amount of water, same water. However, if we do this multiple times, the differences will be, let's say, between 5 to 10 seconds. So it's not consistently that much faster. However, what we're going to do now is just let these coffees cool down a bit, have a quick taste, and then discuss a little bit about the taste differences that comes out of the two brewers. So, conclusion time. Where are we? What's the next step with the April Brewer? And how are these coffees actually tasting? Well, in terms of brewing parameters, they come across quite evenly, which is basically what we're looking at. Now, one of the things that is interesting with the glass here in relationship to the ceramic is that for those of you that have been following us know we have two different versions of the ceramic, the first generation and the second. Now, the second generation have slightly different filter holders, which are great. But what we've been able to do here with the glass is to go back to the old version of it. The reason why we couldn't do that in the ceramics is that it's too uneven in terms of production. So what we're able to do here is to kind of give you the best of both worlds. Now, following, interestingly enough, is the fact that the brewer here is also sold separately, right? So we have the brewing kit, which is both the ceramic brewer and the cup, and now this we have the glass brewer, which is a complete separate little product, so you can buy just the filter holder on its own. Now, when it comes to taste quality, what we'll find when we're brewing is that the glass is generating slightly sweeter cups, a bit more balance, whereas the ceramic is generating a bit more acidity and a bit more vibrancy in the cup. So it really comes down to preferences. That being said, this is when you brew them identical. So if you do a few regulations to your recipe, you can get a very similar, if not identical, cup profile using the glass brewer. And we're gonna put out a bunch of recipes specifically for that as well in relationship to the ceramic for the future as well. So that is gonna come. This is just an introduction. Now, will there be more materials? I know a lot of you are asking us for plastic brewers. Will there come a plastic brewer? Well, we're working on it. It might happen. There's some obvious production challenges when it comes to plastic, mainly that the volumes are huge and the initial costs are quite massive, which is fine if you're a company that produces thousands and thousands and hundreds of thousands of brewers every year. We don't. So we're still trying to figuring that out. And if you're interested, you can send us an email and let us know that you would want to buy one if we have one, and then we're kind of going to take it from there. That being said, we're really excited here to be able to introduce the next generation. It's been a long process. They're being handmade now as we speak. And that's an interesting one. Because they're handmade, it will take a long time to get them delivered. So every single batch we have, we're going to pre-sell several months in advance. And the first one is already sold out almost. So make sure that you go on our website and book one if you want it, basically. That goes for both wholesale and also for you guys brewing at home. Now, overall, we're super excited, and we're also looking forward to bring you kind of more versions of the brewer in the future. And we also want to hear from you guys, like, what do you like, what don't you like with the previous versions, with the new versions once you get them. We know breakage is a factor because our ceramic version is very, very thin. Thin because it makes better coffee. And that's also something that we're trying to improve for the future with the new versions and the new generations. Now, to break it down very simple for you, what's the main difference between the glass and the ceramics? Obviously material. It's going to give a slightly different temperature than the ceramics. However, the difference is not huge because our ceramic is so thin. Taste-wise, it's going to bring a slightly sweeter cup, a slightly rounder cup if you use the exact same recipe. However, you can tweak the recipe to get the same kind of vibrancy and acidity as you would with the ceramic one. One of the benefits here with the glass brewer is that it's not going to break. The base is very solid. Plus, you can buy it in a separate, the dripper only, instead of having to buy a full kit. So it's really up to you what you prefer. We're looking forward to hear more from you guys. We're looking forward to discuss this through our Patreon as well. And let's see what the future holds. We have a lot more brewers coming up. And if you have a specific version of a brewer that you really like, maybe want us to look into doing, then please let us know as well. As always, comments down below. We love when there's a conversation. With that, we want to thank you for watching. We want to give a special thank you to all of our Patreon supporters. It's because of you that we are able to continue to make these videos. And we want you all to feel free to always come with suggestions and ideas on the content that you want to see, because we are doing this for you and because of you. Thank you from all of us here at April.